With thousands of video games available to buy, one might ask, why should I bother playing this one? My name is Kami and I'm a video game completionist who likes to recommend games after 100% completion. So why should you bother with Silent Hill 2? Frankly, this is one of the most emotionally impactful games I've ever played. Never has a game story dug beneath my skin like this game has. It presents such a distinct, visceral art style that has been etched into my brain. Even after 20 years, it's still one of the best horror games ever made. I will clarify, I did not play the original PlayStation 2 version, but the enhanced edition available on the PC, which to improve upon the frame rate, visual effects, textures, audio, and lighting. I'm going to offer my opinions, showcasing the game with the criteria of the game design, the story and atmosphere, the sound design and soundtrack, my user experience, how it compares as a sequel, and the experience of 100% completion. With that all said, allow me to showcase what Silent Hill 2 has to offer. Silent Hill 2 contains a linear path of progression, locked behind item discovery and puzzle solving. It plays as expected from a 5th generation game. You tackle areas filled with monstrous enemies, searching for items to solve puzzles. This allows the player to be fed a structured path without them getting too lost or overwhelmed. The map comes in handy as it'll mark off rooms available to enter, however it is annoying that it doesn't indicate if items have been found. It's very easy to miss items since they blend into the environment, which causes confusion. Unlike Silent Hill, the Resident Evil franchise applied glints of light, which help the items stand out, which I think is preferable without being too hand-holding. The game also features bosses, which aren't difficult, but I do feel are clunky and once again lack depth compared to the Resident Evil franchise. The game has an assortment of items to help you on your journey, with items such as the radio to detect nearby threats and a flashlight to illuminate your path, without giving you too much information. This increases the tension as you don't know exactly what's around the corner, and it forces you to engage for upcoming enemies. This is further bolstered with the deliberate fixed camera. This in turn created a stylized experience to view the game as intended. The camera showed what was necessary and stripped power from the player to enhance the idea of not being in control. One of the best mechanics is the inclusion of checkpoints, which determine which ending you'll receive based on player actions. These subtle actions, such as examining items, triggering cutscenes, and protecting a certain NPC, encourages replayability to see all the endings.
Do I look like your girlfriend?
Whilst I did make comparisons to Resident Evil for improved gameplay elements such as bosses and puzzles, Silent Hill 2 easily triumphs with its excellent story and atmosphere. From the opening cutscene to the very end of this game, it's all very incredibly memorable. The area of Silent Hill is beautiful in a horrific way. The bloody textures and ruined areas present an incredibly grim environment. The location and characters are intertwined, and Silent Hill confronts each character to face their inner demons. I personally believe this aspect is unmatched compared to any game that's come after it, except maybe for Silent Hill 3.
The name on the envelope said, Mary, my wife's name. A dead person can't write a letter. Mary died of that damn disease 3 years ago.
The David Lynch influence is worn like a badge of honor, and every aspect feels uncanny. The cutscenes have this awkward undertone when characters converse, which feels very memorable. Whilst there is a base story which is clear, the player gets to uncover the mystery of Silent Hill alongside James. The game's story is directly tied to its length, and it feels just right at about 6 hours. No matter which ending you receive, the impact of the story sticks with you like gum under your shoe. The sexual and carnal themes felt very confronting to observe, and I actually appreciated that the game did it without it being gratuitous. Whilst there are a lot of ideas which are present, The lack of actual evidence allows the player to really ponder on what exactly happens. The game is meant to put you off. It's not meant to pull punches. The real wow factor for this game is the exploration into the unknown. Just like James, the player has to confront the horrors of this place. Each environment is decrepit and disgusting, allowing the player to soak in the atmosphere and become immersed. Every time you dive into locations such as the labyrinth or hospital, the creeping tension never leaves your mind, which is perfect. The abandoned town leaves you feeling isolated, knowing that you have to take on this place alone. Even when you do find an NPC, they never give any sense of relief. Whilst you are given a story on the surface level, there's depth to Silent Hill. When you explore an area such as the prison or the streets of Silent Hill, there's an awful presence that lingers. This is an excellent way to draw the player to appreciate the environment and the atmosphere. Easily one of the most memorable parts of this game is the eerie soundtrack. It perfectly sets the tone with its sound design to instill fear and uneasiness into the player. The ambient soundtrack ropes the player in when necessary, whilst also providing an absence to isolate the player. Every area has an awful theme associated with it, in the best way possible. The soundtrack is paired with excellent sound design in the gameplay. Every step taken and sound generated creates a composition that always feels creepy and full of tension. The radio, which is meant to help the player, creates anxiety that there's a threat nearby. The same with Pyramid Head's grinding knife and the garble from the enemy NPCs. The same goes for footsteps, which have this isolated feeling, further emphasizing the atmosphere. I have to give props to the dialogue as well, which provides an uncanny listening experience and keeps the player feeling awkward. For me, I liked the jank of this game in terms of gameplay. This is designed to be a PlayStation 2 game, and I wouldn't change that for a modern audience. The focus on exploration and stripped combat allows for anxiety-ridden conflicts, making the player feel vulnerable whilst playing. The story is best experienced blind, and I genuinely had moments where I had to just sit and contemplate. I did feel the combat was janky and wooden, but I wouldn't want this to be an action game at all, otherwise I'd play Resident Evil. Easily the atmosphere and story is the most memorable, and I wouldn't change it at all. My only real complaint is the item discovery, because items can be obscured with the fixed camera angles. Upon replaying the game, it became more troublesome with the character movement and orientation with angles that felt choppy and unnecessary. This became frustrating, especially when navigating tight areas. Compared to the first Silent Hill, the sequel felt like a new direction. In my opinion, it strayed from the cult elements and felt far less confronting to play. Where 1 felt action-heavy and intense, 2 felt harrowing and daunting. I think 2 had better movement, but it lacked intensity in boss fights compared to the first. The first also had an awful camera in my opinion, and I much preferred the newer camera. Silent Hill 2 feels more personal because we explore James' psyche, compared to Chloe's nightmare, which feels more like a fantasy. I actually appreciate the enemy designs, which were more psychological based. I also prefer the music and sound design, but I think that's not too fair to compare since they were made for different hardware. Since the game never has had a Steam release, I didn't have achievements to complete. Whilst I'm aware of the PS3 HD collection, I have no intention to play that version just for trophies. It's an inferior version that took away from the atmosphere, had worse performance and textures, and I don't like the replaced voice actors. The game did have 5 endings to achieve, which I did unlock. To achieve all of these endings, certain conditions must be met. For the in-water ending, you need to examine Angela's knife, read the suicidal diary on the hospital rooftop, read the message to James on the wall of Neely's bar after the hospital, listen to the entire conversation of Mary and James in the hallway before the final boss, have Maria remind you of the way to the hotel, at the bowling alley, and after your first encounter. Examine Mary's photo at least twice. Bump into Maria and allow her to take damage from monsters. Not check back on Maria in the hospital room, and not check back on Maria in the labyrinth. For the leave ending, you need to not examine Angela's knife, not read the suicidal diary on the hospital rooftop, not read the message to James on the wall of Neely's bar, listen to the entire conversation of Mary and James in the hallway, have Maria remind you of the way to the hotel, examine Mary's photo at least twice, bump into Maria and allow her to take damage, not check back on Maria in the hospital, and not check back on Maria in the labyrinth. For the Maria ending, you need to not examine the knife, not read the suicidal diary, not read the message to James, not listen to the entire conversation of Mary and James in the hallway, not have Maria remind you of the way to the hotel, not examine Mary's photo, never bump into Maria and protect her from damage, check back on Maria in the hospital room, and check back on Maria in the labyrinth. After completing the game once, play again on the New Game Plus difficulty and collect 4 items: the White Chrism in room 105 of the Blue Creek Apartments, the Lost Memories book at the Texon gas station in the newspaper stand, the Obsidian Goblet on the broken display case in the Historical Society, and the Crimson Ceremony book on the shelf in the reading room of the Nightmare Hotel. Finish the game once again with all of these items in your inventory. For the UFO ending, you must first complete the game and then the side mission Born from a Wish. Start a new playthrough and pick up the blue gem at the start of the game in the bathroom. After defeating the Flesh Lips boss and loading into the Nightmare Hospital garden, use the gem here. Use it again after killing Eddie before going onto the rowboat. Finally, use it in the room where you watch the videotape but do not watch the tape. For the dog ending, once the rebirth ending has been unlocked, or your save file has 3 of the normal endings, go to the doghouse after your first encounter with Maria. After watching the videotape, go to the observation room in the Nightmare Hotel to get the ending.
How can you sit there and eat pizza?
I think I kind of already implied it, but I do love this game. It's definitely within my personal list of my favorite games of all time. I don't think you should play this for enjoyment, but rather as an experience. It embodies the psychological horror genre and proves itself to be one of the best horror games made. If you ever consider yourself playing a horror game that's not action-based, I cannot recommend this enough.